Welcome to the Millennial Money Canada podcast, a podcast to elevate your financial planning literacy so that you can live well, build wealth, give generously, and leave a legacy that you're proud of. I'm Guillaume, financial planner, and unfortunately, Sam couldn't join today because he texted me this morning that the house is on fire. Not literally, but I think his little one has a fever. The dog has been sprayed by a skunk. One of those mornings. So anyway, it's me solo today who interviewed Kyle Welsh, who is an account executive at MyHSA. MyHSA is a Canadian company delivering benefits to Canadian employees since 2013. Started out as a cloud-based health spending account solution to a paper-based industry. MyHSA envisions simple, personal, and employee-focused health benefits from advisors to employers to employees. MyHSA has become a trusted platform distributed by over 4,000 advisors in Canada, with a leadership team both passionate and dedicated to modern health benefits. They serve 200,000 employees on the system today, with approximately 30,000 small, medium enterprises customers from all different sectors of business. Let's go to the episode. Kyle, welcome to the Millennial Money Canada podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Can you share the story and the background of MyHSA?
Yeah, so MyHSA was started back in 2013 by Tim Kane and Steve McEwen. They were both working in the insurance industry and kind of saw this niche market of health spending accounts that no one was really paying attention to. It was kind of just being thrown into things or bundled with certain stuff, and it was a very, very paper-based industry. And they kind of centered MyHSA around the idea of taking that niche market and making it more tech-forward. Finding a way for companies to offer these accounts to themselves as owners, their employees, in a way that's easy to get up and running, to process and to manage, and creates a huge advantage for clients in today's workspace.
And so you've mentioned when we talked previously that you've been there for 3 years, correct?
Yeah, so I started back in November of what would have been 2022 or 2021. I started out in our chat team, which is, kind of how a lot of us start, dealing with the kind of hands-on, whether it's questions from advisors, plan sponsors, plan members. It's kind of the best way to learn the industry. And then from there, it's kind of able to grow in the role where I work with advisors like you guys, financial planners, insurance advisors, kind of be able to get you on the system, teach you about it, help you sell it, and then work with you and your clients to get these up and running.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You've been instrumental, in helping me onboarding. I think I only have great things to say. And I'll put a disclaimer. I am an advisor on your platform, and every single business owner that I work with, I share this with them, and whether I've onboarded them already or will be onboarding them is just a matter of time. But yeah, I only have great things to say about not only the onboarding and how seamless it is, but also just the ease of use, from the client side, the business owner side, their family members. Anyway, we'll get into that in a second. But yeah, so far, I'm super happy to have you on the podcast and to share about what you guys are doing, because I think there's so many amazing things about your platform and the services that you're providing, especially for corporate business owners. But before I want to get to this, what about can you talk about over the last 3 years, or even since you've been around MyHSA, like the transformations, the growth from maybe prior to you when you started, and then where you guys are right now? Just give us a bit more color on that side of the business.
I mean, the growth has been crazy. One thing I love about us is how scalable we are for what we do. But I remember starting back 3 years ago, and we were operating out of pretty much a house in Loop, in Calgary, Alberta. And now having our own office space, seeing the size of the company employee-wise grow tenfolds, whether it's support team members, adjudication team members, tech team, kind of forming out the sales team that we formed out here. You've really seen the growth over the years, and it really stems from kind of something Tim and Steve did that was really good about this is they knew what their strengths were, and they brought in other people to help build on things that they maybe didn't have a strength in. And, starting with people like Justine on our sales team, Allison, our head of growth, Danielle, our head of experience, Kirsten, who runs our ops, our CTO, Mark. They brought in these people who started to form these teams within the business that have now just become crucial to the day-to-day operation. We're sitting just over 20 employees now, close to double what it was when I started. And it just, the environment, the team, and kind of what they've put together, it all stems down from Tim and Steve and what they've created, but they've had these really unique, amazing people in leadership roles that have gone and built out these amazing teams.
Also, 20 people. Can you talk a bit about the competition in that space?
Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely other providers out there who are spending account focused. I think one thing that kind of separates us from them, and we'll get into details on the payment model and stuff like that, is I've always seen us kind of focus more as a tech company. Our investment goes into the technology that people are using. And I don't really see us as a full out just spending account company. It's the platform itself that drives this thing. The user experience, whether it's for advisors, plan sponsors, plan members, the turnaround time, the bot we put in for our live chat. It's the technology portion that drives everything that we do. And it really shows when it comes to the customization features that not a lot of carriers have. The flex plan that we'll talk about and the things we've kind of been able to build out on the platform that offer really unique solutions to companies to offer these benefits to their employees.
I love how you touch on that tech piece because, I mean, like I mentioned, like how easy it is to use, how easy it is for advisors, for like myself to be onboarded, how easy it is to create, to onboard clients or like a new client, as an admin, and then, they can add, their dependents and whatnot. Like the whole stack just speaks for itself as far as how modern it is and how easy it is. I'll just kind of click through and it can be done like super efficiently. So
Exactly,
I can
right?
see why
And
this is, yeah.
there's nothing more
Go ahead.
valuable
Yeah,
nowadays than time.
yeah,
People don't want to have to be spend insane, whether you're an advisor, spending a bunch of time adding clients somewhere or, plan members and plan sponsors. You don't want to take 3 hours out of your day just to get a dental claim through, right? And, the system's made itself where it's meant to be quick and easy for everybody. So they can just get done what they need to get done and having a great experience while doing it and then getting on with their lives, doing what they're doing.
Can you share a little bit of the an insight on maybe the culture at MyHSA, working for a firm that is 20 employees, that is led by like forward-thinking founders, that is like, is focused on technology and having modern approaches. Can you talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, I'm
About the
a
culture?
huge fan of our culture. I think one of the things that's really cool about us is we're obviously not a startup anymore. We've grown to being one of the big mainstay companies in this space, but we still have that startup feel. Whether it's in an open space office concept where everyone's sitting together, talking, joking, bouncing ideas off each other. We all have amazing individual relationships with one another. Whether it's inside jokes, sharing things we like, TV shows we love to watch, and kind of forming things that way. Culture, it's tough to put it into one word, but it's fun, it's energizing, and it's a group of people coming together with one common goal, and that's what can we do at MyHSA? Provide the best service and options for our advisors and our clients.
Wow. The services that you offer are and available all across Canada in all provinces. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So the two main things I always like to say with these is that they are available countrywide and they only work through people like you. We work through our advisors. You guys are the lifeblood of what we do. Not all other providers operate that way in this space. They will work direct to client. We fully understand that to operate benefits in Canada as a business, you need an advisor. That's the person who's going to be with you through the life of your company to help you when things grow or when things change. That's who you want by your side. And so having guys like you for our advisors it's how we are able to do what we do.
Awesome. Can you talk about or introduce, MyHSA and how it differentiates itself from the other health benefits provider?
So one of the big kind of differentiators for us is the funding model. It's very small business and large business focused. From a small business side, we don't do any sign-up fees, anything like that. We don't force them to pre-fund plans. It's not really fair to ask a mom and pop shop of 5 people to put up $5,000 or $7,000 to start something. We do really believe in our pay-as-you-go model, especially for our small clients. If your employees use it, they pay for it. If they don't, you don't pay anything. Just kind of contradictory to that, traditional thinking of, well, you pay a monthly premium, you get this. That also allows us to stay fully cost controlled. You know what your price is going to be on these year to year. Only time that changes is if as a company, you want to change that. You want to offer more, but your budget's staying fixed. You know what you're in for. And if it's not used, you're in for less.
That's key what you said. So just to summarize, other providers may offer a similar plan, but for example, the business owner might have to, let's say, put $10,000 into example like that account. But for you, it's a pay as you go model where if the business owner has a set like health spending account, which we'll get into that in a second, has a set amount, but they're only using 10% of it. Well, they're only paying as they go. Essentially, is that's what you're saying is probably one of the key major differentiator compared to other similar plans in Canada, correct?
Yeah, that's our model. Some providers do still do that pay-as-you-go model. Some of them will work in whether it's subscription fees or sign-up fees and things like that. We just don't do that. Again, you pay for what you use. If you have 10 employees and only one person uses it, that you're paying for that one person. That's kind of one of the things that, I find with us, and there are a few providers out there who are going to offer similar things like that as well. But it's the best route for a small business who needs to be cash conscious to kind of go with.
Okay. I want to go through the three main client types that you guys focus on today, or at least that you have services that are catered to those three groups with you. Okay. So the first one is individual incorporated business owner. I want to touch on like all the services you have for that. Then as the business grows, anywhere from small to medium enterprises, which I think you may qualify between like say 2 and 50 employees. What are the solutions or the plans that are more catered to that? And then lastly, I want to touch on the larger enterprises where, you're looking at like 50 plus employees, for example. And then what are the solutions for that? So that's what I would like to touch on with you today, if that's okay with you.
That's awesome. Let's do it.
Okay, awesome. So for an individual incorporated business owner, which by the way is all of my clients. So all my clients are either currently incorporated or soon to be incorporated for various reasons. And they're for the most part solopreneurs. Maybe the wife, the spouse might be involved. Maybe they'll have a business partner. But for the most part, you're talking about 1 to 2 person shop, whether it's on the consulting side or they own like, a physio or, IT consultants and, realtors, right? That professionals, right? So that's kind of who we service. And Sam as well is in a similar, has similar clientele. So what is like the number one solution for this type of client?
It's going to be the health spending account. The one thing I love about a one-person corporation is I'll just call them slam dunks. You can't find a reason for them to not set this up. From a CRA compliance side, and we'll get into the CRA side of a health spending account, the incorporation part is key, and the actively working part for the owner and any other employees is also key. But essentially what you're doing is you're setting up a plan that you're only paying for if you use, but is there if you need it. And what an HSA is and what this is, it's a non-taxable benefit provided to an employee by a company who can in turn write off what they're being charged for it. So as the owner of your company, anything you spend on it, you're going to get back tax-free. Your corporation's going to get the nice tax deduction too for you using that account. It just works well together.
Okay, let's break this down here. So for example, if I'm a business owner and I'm going to the dentist, so I would pay the dentist out of pocket. Then I would submit the claim in my HSA application, and then it will be processed, get reimbursed to the personal checking account the next day or 2 days after once processed. And then it will be simultaneously charged to the corporation as an expense. Is that
exactly
correct?
Yeah. So the employee's going to pay out of pocket. They'll submit the claim either through our mobile app, which is on both app stores, or through the online portal on a computer. Our adjudication team goes over to make sure A, it's staying CRA compliant, and B, it's staying compliant to how the company wants this plan to operate. From there, we'll pay the employee back directly via direct deposit. We'll pull the claim charge, the admin fee and taxes straight from the corporate bank account on a Wednesday or Friday. Honestly, the reimbursement time is less than a week. It's super quick. It's super easy. And now you're offering a tax-free benefit to your employee or to yourself as an owner while your company's taking the write-off.
The expense. And like you said, this is a slam dunk because the alternative to this model would be for a business owner to, let's say they pay themselves salary or dividend. Then they get this personally, they get taxed on this. So they've paid taxes at the corp level if it was a dividend, then they distribute it personally. They pay taxes on this personally. And then it would be after tax personal dollars that they would go and like pay for perhaps maybe a plan where they would pay monthly premiums there, or they would, let's say, even pay out of pocket, let's say they don't have insurance, for example. So that's very inefficient in terms of using that after-tax personal dollars to pay for health spending. And then that health spending account is allowing to shift that spending or that expense to the corp, which is pre-tax. So it's actually reducing the tax at the corporate level as well. This is
exactly. Yeah, it really is. And there are important things to be aware with these because the health spending account is offering a non-taxable benefit. The rules and regulations fall to the CRA who's going to kind of control how these operate. We talked about being incorporated businesses, actively working business owners, reasonable plan limits that contain an element of risk. There are rules like that, but following those rules in turn gets you, like we talked about, you're getting your health, your dental, your prescription drugs, your vision, your paramedicals, you're getting coverage for all of that. Your business is getting the deduction. And instead of having to use after tax dollars personally to cover these, you're getting them back tax free.
That's awesome. So let's go back to the amount that a business owner would set. What would you recommend, and what are the guidelines there that governs the limits that a business owner could set in their health spending account?
Yeah, so my personal recommendation is always going to be to work with the corporate accountant on what they think is safest and best. They're the ones that would, if there's ever an audit, would have to kind of step up to the plate and defend what's going on. They should have the final say. But from an industry standpoint, years ago, they kind of banded together and put together what's called normalized income. The idea is, okay, what benefit amount is really kind of what relates well to your role and what you're doing within a company. So the best way to look at it is take 10 to 15% of what you would pay someone to do your job. If you're a business owner and you're taking in $300,000 a year out of the company, but you were to kind of retire and just become a shareholder, if you were to bring someone in to come in and take over your duties, what are you paying them? And then 10 to 15% of that kind of normalizes that income and creates a safe plan.
Okay. No, that makes sense. Can you talk about who would qualify or who would be covered under a health spending account that would be administered by an incorporated business owner that is a solopreneur, for example?
So again, incorporated business, actively working, drawing either T4 dividend income. What you really want to avoid is a pure shareholder. Someone who just has shares in the company who isn't actively working for the company. Tough to find that in a one-person corporation because if the company is doing anything, that person is usually getting work done. But yeah, an operating company, actively working, and then receiving that dividend or T4 salary, either one is fine.
Okay. And then they can have, so under the health spending account, it would be themselves, and then they can have their spouse, kids. Who else could be to this health spending account plan for that business owner?
Yeah, so from a company level, the company's always going to get to pick if they allow dependents as a whole on a plan class or not. But, from a CRA standpoint, how they define dependent is related by blood, common law, or marriage, living with the employee and financially reliant on the employee. Spouses are automatically eligible when living together. This kind of does open up the door to what you're not going to see on the group side, and that's parents and overage children. Your 30-year-old son still lives on your couch and doesn't work. They're an eligible dependent. Something happens with your parents financially, they need to move in with you and, they're financially relying on you. That creates eligibility for them as well.
Okay. Okay. No, that's great. And then can you talk about the eligible expenses themselves? And, I have a list here. It's pretty extensive. Yeah, it's pretty extensive, but just at a high level, can you just comment about the eligible expenses and why that would be much superior to those cookie cutter plans that even most of us are basically paying or used to pay, where you pay your premium and you get whatever comes with it?
Yeah, so from a kind of an overall basic standpoint, what you see between group plans and the HSA are very similar. Your dental's in there, your vision's in there. Your paramedicals, your prescription drugs, things like that. Where you start to see differences, things like, it's what I call blanket coverage. You talk about paying that monthly premium. That monthly premium nets you X amount of dental, X amount of paramedical, X amount of vision. Your HSA is just taking a dollar amount and covering everything. use it how you need to use it, just stay within that limit. And you're going to see some loosened restrictions. Prescription drugs through an insured plan, things are going to be, they're going to say, well, you can only use this drug type, maybe, this brand, or you have to have this wrong with you to be able to get access to this. From an HSA standpoint, you're looking at, was it prescribed by a doctor? Is it ran through a pharmacy? Once you're hitting on those, you're good to go. A big one I'm seeing a lot lately is, we all see those Ozempic and Mounjaro commercials. You're seeing a disconnect with the weight loss drugs not being covered under a group insured plan, but they will be covered under an HSA because they're meeting those requirements. The one I always like to point out to business owners is, because HSAs are not anti-insurance, they are made to kind of coincide and work with them. If you have an insured plan for your health and dental, you can run health and dental premiums through your HSA. And then you can run the remaining amounts not covered under your health and dental through your HSA. So common example, you have a health and dental plan. It costs you $200 a month. You're running that $200 through your HSA. And then you're going to the dentist. That health and dental insured plan covers 80%. You're taking the remaining 20% and running it through your HSA. It creates a no out-of-pocket coverage that takes advantage of both, and they work together seamlessly.
That's a great point, because there are people who might want to have a plan just as a safety and security where they pay that premium, but if they have, let's say, a major restorative procedure that costs $5,000, they don't want to be out of pocket, because ultimately the health spending account, it's an expense on your top line, from your top line revenue in your business. So you're self-insured on that. So if someone is not, let's say, comfortable, they would rather, I still want to have a basic plan in place that, let's say, would cover 70-80% of, let's say, a procedure, and they would pay like their $200 a premium a month. They would also run it through the HSA. So ultimately it is becoming a deductible expense to the corporation, but then any excess would also be covered by the HSA, which is also a deductible expense to the corporation.
Exactly, right? You're securing yourself, especially against those major events where, if it's a $10,000 event, you're working with an $8,000 HSA, it's not going to be fully covered, right? Where, even if your insured plan's covering that at 50%, you're getting $5,000 through there. You can take the other $5,000 through your HSA and just make sure you're never out of pocket, but B, you're going to want the insured plan in there for catastrophic events like that. HSAs don't replace like a catastrophic coverage or, a travel coverage or something like that.
Interesting. I mean, I know you're working mostly with advisors, but do you find that clients will end up scrapping the basic plans and just replace it with like an HSA and be self-insured totally? Or do you see more business owners keeping a basic plan in place and then topping it up with like an HSA plan?
It really depends. And I know we're kind of going to get into this as we go, but the cool thing about these accounts and how you're able to set them up is they can be with a company from day one throughout its entire lifespan, and they'll adjust and change as the company grows, so they can always stick with them. You will find on a smaller standpoint, with whether it's a solo incorporated business or a few employees, financially the group route doesn't always make sense. But at some point you hit a size where you need insured benefits, whether it's disability, whether it's, life, CI, whatever it may be, you're going to need those in place. Where the HSA can start off when you're maybe a bit smaller and financially the group side doesn't make sense. But as you grow into that where you're bringing in group insurance, this can just stay with you and again, coexist with that and be there for a company the entire step of the way.
Okay. Before we move to I guess that's a good segue. Let's move to the small and medium-sized enterprises. So let's say when we get to two, employees, so maybe there's the business owner and there's, one or two employees, and then it grows to, anywhere from like the 2 to 50, right? So first of all, if I'm a business owner and I have 1 or 2 employees on my staff, can I set health spending accounts for them? Or now is it called a wellness spending account? Or walk me through this here.
Yeah, so the plan types are always available for anyone. It really just comes down to which makes sense for the situation you're in. For example, the HSA will always make sense for anyone, whether it's an owner or an employee. And from the ownership level, it generally is the only one that makes sense from a tax standpoint for them. The other plans you start to work in, like the wellness one you mentioned, those are taxable benefits. They're really good hiring and retention tools as a company's trying to grow and bring in employees. You go back 5, 6 years ago, these were throw-ins to benefit plans. They're kind of like, oh, whatever, offering coverage for gym memberships and stuff like that. What they've become now is they're really standard in the spending account space. With a younger generation coming into the workforce, those are the things they're looking for. They're not too keen on going to see the dentist once a year or the chiropractor once a month. They're focused on their gym memberships. They're focused on their vitamins and supplements. And the one thing we've found a lot recently is that wellness plans, even though they become a taxable benefit to the employee, they do a very good job of picking up where an HSA or an insured plan start to leave off. The most common example of that is a naturopath. You go to a naturopath, you pay $100 for the visit. That's fine. Your HSA covers that. Your insured plan covers that. 9 times out of 10 or 10 times out of 10, you're leaving that naturopath with a couple $100 in vitamins and supplements that neither the HSA or group plan are covering. That was leaving employees a few $100s out of pocket, discouraging them from them to go to that. The wellness plan then can come in and kind of pick that cost up to make sure that the employees are still taking a focus on their health and wellness and aren't going to be out of pocket crazy expenses. But from a standpoint of what this is, when I say taxable benefit, all that really means is from an employee standpoint, whatever they get paid back on this becomes tax-like income. It goes on their T4s at the end of the year, or companies add it to payroll throughout the year. Either way, it's taxable. Because it has that taxability piece to it, it opens up what you can do with it. From our standpoint, which is, not a lot of other carriers do, we've opened up the list. We'll give you a preset amount of ideas you can go off of if you want for what we see is most common, but we want companies to get creative with it. Like I mentioned, it's a huge hiring and retention tool. Add whatever you want in there that's going to A, reflect the culture of the business you're trying to go, or B, it's going to help you stand out amongst other employers when you're trying to attract and retain talent.
Awesome.
I'm still here. Do you have me?
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. No worries. Okay, that's awesome. Let's just to recap what you just said. I think you've covered a few points and I want to dive deeper on a few of them here. So if you set up a health spending account for your employees, it's a tax-free benefit to them. So they'll go to the dentist, they'll run their claims through the app, and then you'll deduct it as an expense, but it's a tax-free benefit to them. But when you set up a wellness spending account, then similar fashion, you would dictate, let's say, $1,000 per employees. So if you have 2 employees, that would be $4,000 that they're able to spend on the list that is approved as eligible expenses for taxable benefits. And then the list is pretty interesting. I mean, alternative health, like you mentioned, a naturopath, there's fitness and sporting. You're talking about gym memberships, golf, green fees, personal training, yoga, cosmetics, personal, so cell phone. I mean, the list is very interesting. So if they spend that amount, then that gets added to their taxable income for the year. It becomes a taxable benefit. Is it still a tax deductible expense? Is it a deductible expense to your company, to your corporation?
Yeah. So any of the plans we talk about, any of the plans we talk about today, it's not going to change from the company side. Your pricing is going to remain the same.
Okay.
From an admin fee and claim amount standpoint, the ability to write it off is still there. In Ontario, for example, from a provincial standpoint, they do charge different amounts of taxes depending on which one the employee is running through to the company. But from our standpoint, we're not charging different for what you're offering. Okay.
And I'm assuming the goal is to govern how this employee would spend their money. What would be the main, you mentioned, of course, retentions, and employees want to have the flexibility to spend the dollars on things that they care beyond the traditional group plans. But why would you have, or why do you see companies implementing wellness spending account, for example, instead of just giving a bonus or a raise, which ultimately could be the same thing, right?
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, the way I always kind of like to approach this, if you get $1,000 raise, that's a lot of money. But once you divide that over 12 months and, you're getting paid every 2 weeks, you divide that again, it's an unnoticeable amount to an employee, right? It doesn't really click in. It's a couple $100. Where you present them with this wellness account, you say hey, here's $2,000 real dollars. You get to spend on all these cool things. it's an optics piece for a company, and it's helpful to an employee, right? They might need that full $2,000 back right away. They can go ahead and get that. And it's the one thing I love about these is they're culture drivers. Because they're so customizable, it allows the company to say like, hey, this is our culture. This is what we care about. I think one of the coolest wellness items I've ever seen was a category called Do What You Love. Company didn't care what you put through, but all they said was, hey, if you love to do something, go out and do it. We'll reimburse you for it. We care about your lives outside of the office. We want you to be doing the things that make you happy, and really provide that huge wellness component. And in turn, you know how it goes. Happier employees are harder working employees. You're going to work miserable. You're not putting your best foot forward. These plans will really help drive a company's culture and create the culture that they want to create.
I love that. That's so well said, man. Yeah, that's so true. I mean, it's one of the best way to reinforce and implement a culture and change a culture towards the values that you share or what, the workplace that you want to create, right? That's one of the probably best ways to do it. So that's awesome. Do you want to talk about My Flex Plan? So what is My Flex Plan? What is a flexible spending account? And how does that differ from a wellness spending account and like the health spending account we covered already?
Yeah. So when we talk about that health spending account, HSA, or wellness spending account, WSA, is standalones, the idea behind it really is the company's picking an amount to put in each for that employee, and that employee spending against that amount. Right? If your company says it's going to be 1,000 in one and 1,000 in the other, that's what you're spending off of. The My Flex Plan comes in centered around the idea of employee choice. Right? If a company's willing to budget $2,000 for an employee, why dictate how they spend it? Maybe that one employee needs $2,000 towards a gym membership. The other one needs $2,000 towards their kids' braces. So instead of offering these as separate balances, you're kind of tossing it into a blender. You say like, hey, here's $2,000. You're going to get 30 days every year when your plan renews. That one's a CRA rule. But you get those 30 days to pick how you're going to divide that up between the health side and the wellness side. Company's just going to have a say on the total amount, but they're going to leave the choice up to the individual employee on what's going to work best for them, for their family. It allows you to forecast year to year what it's going to look like. It also grows with you though, right? I mean, I look back when I was 20 years old, I would have been focused on sporting goods. I would have been focused on stuff like that. I would have been more of a wellness spending account guy. Talk to me now at 30, I'm probably going to go a bit more for my chiropractor, going to see the dentist a bit more than I used to. It grows as your life grows, and it allows you to adjust it year to year, depending on your needs.
Okay. So the flexible spending account, really, the name gives it away.
Yeah.
Is that it's okay. I see. Totally. I thought I was reading on your website about RRSP matching or any other. Can you comment on that?
Yeah,
And
so
how does that
part
work?
of the My Flex Plan, because it has the ability to allocate funds to buckets, what you can do is add what we call additional flex items or additional flex options, and you can add extra buckets that employees can allocate to. From a MyHSA standpoint, all these is there things that money gets tossed into that we just lock in there and track. The most common example of how this is used is a company who has a group RSP already set up. We're not offering one, but if you have one through another carrier, you can build this into your plan. So if we go back to our $2,000 example, the employees say, well, you know what? I don't think I have a lot of health or wellness expense this year. I'm going to allocate my money to the additional group RSP option. From our standpoint at MyHSA, we're just going to track what goes in there, who put it in there, and it's locked away so they can't spend it. And then your plan sponsors are able to go in, be like, all right, okay, employees A, B, and C allocated X amount of dollars to their RSP. We'll work with our provider. We'll get those extra contributions made.
Okay. So again, it's really about, that flexible is whether it's towards health, wellness, so health spending, wellness spending, even like, again, towards their group RSPs. They really have the control as to where that $2,000 that was allocated to them goes. So
yeah, it's full employee choice. Your company's going to have your budget per employee. You're not going to exceed that, but the employee's now going to be able to take that budget and really choose what's going to work best for them.
Okay. Can you talk about the cost that is associated with running any of those accounts, whether it's the health spending account, the wellness, or the flexible plan? What is the cost to that business owner who sets that up for themselves and their employees?
Yeah. So obviously the company's always going to be on the hook for the claim amount paid back to the employee. There's an administration fee that goes on top of these for the claim, generally around 10%. Talk to your advisor. They'll be able to go over that with you in more detail. But let's say you take that 10% fee on a $100 claim. There's a $10 admin fee. And then we work in provincial taxes. Between BC and Manitoba, you're looking at a 5% GST charged on that admin fee. As you kind of creep out east, the Maritimes, and some territories, that does change. There's some HST and some Ontario has some RST. So again, just talk with your advisor for what that looks like, depending on the province you're in. But those are the three charges you're going to look at: a claim amount, an admin fee, and provincial taxes.
Okay. So whether it's the business owner itself or like one of their employees, for example, they go get a massage for $100, then there's going to be a $10 added to that plus the taxes there. So, and then the $10 would account for the processing fee and like the advisor fee. And that entire amount, which would be like, let's say $110 and change, would be processed as a deductible expense to the business owner's corporation.
Correct. Yeah, that's exactly it. And then I guess one thing to note we haven't talked about, Quebec does operate a little differently with the HSA. Don't usually go into it too much. It does become a partially taxable benefit there. Not fully, but yeah, that's, again, one of those conversations. If you're looking at these and you do have employees in Quebec or your company is in there, work with your advisor and just to kind of go with what's the best route for your company and for employees.
Yeah. Okay. So what you're saying is, let's say someone would get the same massage in Quebec, because Quebec probably has a different list of eligible expenses that is taxable and non-taxable, then, like you said, a portion of whatever they're running to that program becomes a taxable benefit to the employee. So it will be added to their taxable income for that year. Is that correct?
Yes. So the list remains the same. Just anything that's covered under an HSA is partially taxable. However, it's on the federal or taxed on the provincial level, not the federal level. And there's a spot for it on the employee's tax form at the end of the year. Does operate a bit differently that way over there.
Okay, I see. Okay, perfect. Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, Quebec, classic. Yeah, I mean, they wanted to speak French and they didn't stop there. We'll do everything differently over there. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Okay, no, that's awesome. That's a great, I think, explanation from all those accounts. Now let's move to once a company gets bigger. So now you're talking about, let's say, 50 plus employees, and specifically the services or the plans that that offers for these types of enterprises.
Yeah, for sure. So I know I've said it a few times, but one of the cool thing about these accounts is they're able to grow with the company and they're kind of able to stick them side by side forever. Part of the reason behind that is the custom class structures. We will allow companies to pick how they want to create these. These plans do need to have, reasonable class structures in place. You're not, I like this employee better than this one kind of thing. So, but how those class structures want to be put in place is up to the company. If they're, as they grow, let's say years of service starts to become important to them. So they're making higher benefit plans depending on how long you work there. And these can adapt year to year. If you jump from 5 to 10, maybe you go years of service. When you jump from, 10 to 30, maybe you're now defining the benefit compared offer rules, or you're sticking with years of service. That's always going to be in there. And the one cool thing I found is whether it's just an HSA, just a WSA, or my flex plan, or the MySO, which I know you want to get into, these can stay consistent with a company. You don't have to change. You can keep it there, or you can kind of adjust depending on, again, what reflects your culture and as a business, what you want to do with your employees and their benefit.
No, that's good. Okay, let's touch on MySO. So MySO stands for Administrative Services Only. Talk to me about, okay, what is it? How does it work? And how is this a solution for larger enterprises?
So yeah, first off, it's really important to dictate, because ASO is a very popular term in the insurance industry. This isn't what you think of when you think of a group insured ASO. It is different. It's just kind of the name we settled on for what was closest. what an ASO means to us as a spending account is a defined spending account. So if we kind of look back to the start of our conversation, talking about, an HSA, for example, being a blanket coverage, a set dollar amount blankets everything underneath it. ASO allows you to tweak what that blanket looks like. So let's say instead of just offering a $5,000 health spending account to an employee that covers everything, we can start to section this out. Let's say we're going to do $2,000 towards dental. We're going to do $1,500 towards paramedicals, $500 towards vision with a cap in place. We can do things like that. We can also take normal spending accounts and add in buckets. The DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion benefit space is growing so much lately. You can start to implement that into your benefit plans. Let's say we take a $2,000 MyFlex plan, but on top of that, we add in a bucket for a $2,000 mental health only program. Your flex plan still stays in place. Your employees get their choice. They can spend it how they want. But if something happens, they need help with their mental health services, they don't have to deplete their spending account. They can access that $2,000 bucket to use against mental health services. Or if it's IVF treatments is a popular one, orthodontics for kids is its own bucket. Just really gives companies the ability to kind of either define the spending or really define what's being offered to their employees.
But then as a company, as you get into that size, and let's say one employee developed, an illness that requires extremely expensive medication, for example, but you don't have necessarily like a group plan in place, you're relying on like an ASO model, then as a business owner, you'd be on the hook for the claims of that employee. Is that correct?
Yeah, so nothing's changing from an operation standpoint of how they pay for these. If $10,000 is made eligible and that employee puts through a $10,000 claim, your company's paying that $10,000 bill. It's self-insured. All of our plans are. But what you're doing is you're kind of saying like, hey, like what extra avenues do we want available to our employees? You look at a company of 50 people, not everyone's going to need fertility treatments. Not everyone's going to be accessing a mental health bucket. But they're there if they're needed. And you're not paying for them just to be there. You're only paying when they're actually accessed and used.
Right. And it's something I missed on your explanation is that you also set a limit. So is that right? Like, oh, okay. So that's how you're kind of protecting the expenses that they can run through because there's a limit that each can access essentially.
Exactly. Right. Like you still operate as spending accounts. Your limits are still in place. But you're kind of able to define what that limit looks like. Is it broken out into a bunch of different things? Is it a normal flex plan limit with an extra $2,500 for mental health, $5,000 for fertility treatments, $5,000 for gender affirmation programs? Those are things we're seeing on the system now that companies are really taking the proactive steps. Like, hey, we want to make sure we're there for our employees and what they need.
Right. Okay. So as a business owner or like as management or HR, they would basically set a company-wide limit, but also an individual limit. So they would each employee would have their, like you said, health spending account or wellness spending account, and then they'll have an additional bucket that would be dictated to as like specific things like you mentioned, like diversity and inclusion or gender affirmation or, whatever aspect that the company wants it to be covered based, of course, on their values and giving the flexibility to the employees to spend money on that. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Like the limit's always per employee. Every bucket's going to be a limit per employee. You're not going to have like a $100,000 mental health bucket for a company. You're going to have a $5,000 mental health bucket per person. And that's kind of always important to keep in mind. The limit's always set per employee, but with how the ASO is structured, it also allows you to kind of expand on that. Instead of just it being a limit per employee, you can now let's dictate limits per families. Let's do an individual limit where every member of the family gets $1,000 to spend on this one thing, or we'll put it into a pool. And every time a family member is added, $1,000 goes in that pool for the whole family to access. It's just a bunch of customization points that companies can touch on to really kind of, work out what they want this benefit to look like.
Okay. No. I get it. That's fascinating. Your description of MySO, it's a lot more around customizations of, like we mentioned, like what's important to the employees and depending on what you want to offer that is outside the traditional plans.
Exactly. I always stick with defined spending account. As a company, you're going to truly define what you want to offer your employees.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. Wow. That was awesome. So we've covered, just to summarize this here, so we've covered for solo and corporate business owners, then we've covered the services once they, let's say, grow to 2 and more employees. And then finally, we've covered, once they reach like larger enterprises, what kind of customized plan they could offer the employees as health spending benefits. Last question for you. What's in the pipeline for MyHSA? Can you share some insights as to maybe what you guys are working on and what enhancement we could expect in the future?
The one thing I love about us, especially operating as a tech company, is we're a lot more progressive to being able to make changes and make them quickly. And we've always operated under the standpoint like, hey, if you bring us a good idea, if we think it's going to work, we're going to build it. We'll get that done. We're always working on new things. For example, we just implemented a bulk claiming feature for employees. Our live chatbot, Sage, who now has an outstanding 83% resolution rate on questions. That bot's always growing. We're always looking to do something. There's always things coming down the pipeline. I do like to keep things as a surprise. There's some cool stuff coming out. Keep your eye out for it. It's going to be awesome. But like I said, if you have something in mind, bring it to us. We're always open to a conversation.
Nice. And what's the best way to, I guess what you mentioned at the beginning, if you're a business owner, you need to work with your advisor to work, because you guys don't work directly with clients, right? You always work through an advisor. So as an advisor, for example, if you're my client, I will set you up on the platform. I'll create yourself a profile. I'll set up your plan. I'll also set you up as a business owner as like an admin, or you tell me who you want me to set up as an admin. And then that person will be able to set up dependents and whatnot, right? So
yes. So
but if people want to learn more,
the end game's always through the advisor. When you're on the system, you're on through the advisor. We fully understand not every company has one yet. Go to getmyhsa.com as a business, fill out a contact form for us. We'll get in touch with you. If you think this is something that's going to work for you, we'll help you find the advisor if you don't have one. We'll get you through one. It's not all on you. And then from an advisor standpoint, same thing, getmyhsa.com. Sign up as an advisor. We'll get you on the platform. I'll personally go through a demo with you. We'll show you how this could be a great solution for your clients.
That's awesome. Cal, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And I only have good things to say about not only you, as a person and how you've onboarded me, but also the fact you took the time to come and share the ins and outs of how your accounts work. I think it's amazing. I just want to, thank you for your time. And we'll keep in touch. And for all the listeners, you can visit getmyhsa.com. Link is going to be in the show notes. And as usual, if you want to get in touch, you can visit mwadvisors.ca. You can book an intro meeting with us, subscribe to our newsletter, check out our podcast, which is available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. If you listen to the end, you can rate it by just clicking on the stars if you're on Spotify at the top. And with that, thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.